communism, that we'll equalize the society and so on. Cultural revolution put paid to communism as legitimacy, because people got, this is, it was a terrible experience for most of them. So then Deng Xiaoping based his legitimacy on growth. I will deliver growth and wealth to you, which they've done actually. They've become a middle-income society, $8,000 per capita. But then growth started slowing after 2008, despite huge stimulus, the biggest stimulus actually ever in history. And growth is slowing, so now where do you turn? So you suddenly have a regime which relies on much more internal control. China spends more on internal security than it does on national defense today, and has for the last 4 years. But also relies on nationalism for its legitimacy. And you see the same phenomenon of new authoritarians, whether it's Abe, whether it's Xi Jinping, whether it's Modi, whether it's Erdogan, whether it's Putin, all the way to, in fact, Trump is the last one. The US is actually imitating the rest of the world. But basically, we are in a much more dangerous world, where the Westphalian state, to our west, of course, has vanished or is collapsing in West Asia. And to our east, you have very strong state structures based on ultranationalism. And therefore, you have problems like the South China Sea, East China Sea, and you see these rubbing up against each other. And as I said, as our interests grow, we also start rubbing up against China in the periphery, which we share. It's our periphery, but it's also their periphery, when I mentioned the South China Sea. And this is only a partial list of changes. If you add to this climate change, the effects of technology, the global shift in manufacturing, in the base, the pattern, once you get digital manufacturing, you see the revolutions in energy technology and communications. I mean, you think the changes and the shifts in the balance of power between states and in their relative power is going to be tremendous. So we have a new global economic order that's in the process of being formed, but we're still in the old one. So we're sort of betwixt and between orders. We're in a stage of transformation where nobody can actually tell you where we are going. It's much harder for anybody to tell you, okay, this is where we'll be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But this is a very destabilizing situation for everyone. So it's a dangerous world, it's a fragmenting world. You've seen economically the RCP, so you get economic blocks, you get North America separate, the US pulls out of TPP, and you have ultranationalism. And as I said, you have this problem of internal societies in churn, changing very fast. Just to give you an example, in India, for instance, all the indices of violence, whether it was terrorist infiltration, deaths of security forces, etc., were all declining steadily from 2000 to 2012. After 2012, two things have been growing. One is communal violence, and these are all on the MHA website. The other is social violence, crimes against a person, rape, those sorts of things. And that is a reflection actually of the social churn that we're in. As we urbanize, by 2025, 75% of the global population will be urban. And about 70% of them will be living within 200 miles of the sea. And that's really quite a concentration if you think of it. And in terms of climate change, frankly, it's a disaster waiting to happen. For China, by 2025, 70% of all Chinese will be in cities. And for us, we'll be around 50% by then. And that's a huge change. So what should we do in this situation where there's uncertainty in the global system, where we are also undergoing tremendous internal churn and change, and where it's hard to predict where exactly the globe is going, but our goal remains. Our goal doesn't change. And our means to achieve it have also increased compared to the past. There are some people who are so frightened by what they see. When they see this rise of China, they see the chaos, who say, oh, we should ally with the US, and there's no other great power, superpower left, so they say we should do an alliance. For me, that's exactly the wrong answer. That's not the way to go. We've survived with strategic autonomy by one name or another, call it non-alignment, genuine non-alignment, whatever, we've used different words. Basically, we followed strategic autonomy since the beginning, and it's worked for us. As I said, It did provide sufficient security for us to be able to go through the best years in our history in terms of growth, in terms of changing our people's lives. I don't see how alliance today is going to solve our problems. No other country shares your interests, your particular history, your resource endowment. This combination of having influence and power, but also having so many poor people and so many domestic preoccupations that we need to take care of. So it seems to me that actually this is the time to actually double down on strategic autonomy, but to pick issues and to do issue-based coalitions with all those that you can work